When my daughter said, "You should have died before Dad," I discovered an incredible change within Julia. Heart had never been caught off guard like this. The words tore through her heart, echoing in the silence of their small living room. "You should have died before Dad." Emily screamed, her voice like glass shattering against tile. Julia's breath hitched, the weight of those words hanging in the air like the stillness after a storm. Who could imagine a daughter wishing such pain on her own mother? Days and nights blurred together as Julia tirelessly worked her nursing job at the local hospital by day and waited tables at the diner by night. Each paycheck barely covered their bills, yet her focus remained on Emily, the memory of her late husband, a devoted veteran, ever haunting their quaint home. It was decorated with snapshots of happier days, birthday parties, family vacations, and those quiet moments, all draping the walls like a bittersweet tapestry. This particular evening, after another grueling shift full of caring for the sick, Julia returned home, her body aching. Emily was waiting, eyes stormy and filled with unspoken hurt. "You're never here," she shouted. "You don't care." Julia felt her chest tighten, crushed under the weight of Emily's words. The confrontation ignited an ache within her. Half-addled from fatigue, Julia packed a small bag. She needed to breathe, to escape the museum of memories and the echoes of her husband's absence. She slipped out into the darkened streets, the chill of October brushing over her skin. As Julia wandered, she found herself drawn to the community center, where the warm glow of lights spilled out into the night. She peeked inside and saw neighbors gathering, sharing laughter, helping each other with food and clothing. A little boy with a crooked smile helped an elderly neighbor carry groceries. With each moment she witnessed, a flicker of something began to rise within her, a call to community. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Nights turned into weeks, and as Julia engaged with these newfound friendships, laughter began to fill the hollow spaces in her heart. She returned home after each visit with renewed hope, determined to mend her broken relationship with Emily. However, a storm brewed on the horizon. Rumors buzzed through the community. Massive budget cuts threatened to close the hospital. Staring in disbelief at the news, Julia felt her knees buckle. The thought of losing that part of her life brought unwanted pressure crashing down. No job meant more strain for both her and Emily. At the town hall meeting, Julia found herself standing before a crowd of faces filled with concern. Sweat brushed her brow, but she felt an undeniable strength claiming its space inside her. With a clear voice, tinged with shaky resolve, she began to speak. "We are all facing something. Let us lean on each other, not just for ourselves but for our families. We need each other." In that moment of raw honesty, she saw Emily's tear-streaked face in the crowd, radiating conflicting emotions: hurt, longing, hope. The room buzzed with energy, adults murmured, and eyes glimmered. As the weight of the moment settled, Julia's heart raced. Could they finally bridge the sorrow that cut so deep? The future felt inevitable yet fraught with uncertainty, as mother and daughter stood on the brink of a necessary journey, a journey toward understanding, healing, and perhaps a rekindled bond. Julia couldn't shake the tension she felt in the room. As she scanned the faces in the crowd, it seemed they were all holding their breath, waiting for her next words. The weight of her daughter's gaze felt heavy, but also electrifying. This was her moment. They were in this together, just like the community they represented. "In times like these," she said, trying to steady her voice, "we can't afford to pull apart. We must come together." With those words, she opened the door to possibility, not just for herself, but for Emily too. After the meeting, Julia caught Emily's eye in the milling crowd, her daughter's expression a mix of vulnerability and peeved pride. Julia's heart pounded. This was an opportunity she couldn't let slip away. "Let us talk," Julia suggested gently, her voice a whisper amid the chatter. Emily hesitated, then nodded. They stepped away from the huddle of people, seeking refuge on a quiet park bench nestled under the glow of the streetlights. The silence was thick between them, filled with unspoken words. Julia dared to break it. "I know things have been hard since your dad," she started, her voice trembling slightly. "Yeah, well, you have no idea how hard it's been for me." Emily fired back, anger bubbling up. "It's like you only care about work and everyone else." Julia felt a sting in her chest, but she knew the truth behind those words. "I'm trying to keep us afloat, Em," she replied, her voice softer now. "I know I missed a lot, and I know that's not an excuse. But you're my priority. I need to be here for you." There was a flicker of confusion in Emily's eyes, but anger still lurked just beneath the surface. "You didn't even notice when I stopped talking. You don't hear me, Mom. Then help me hear you," Julia exclaimed, desperation slipping into her tone. "I want to understand. Please, let us start fresh." A beat passed, and then another. Julia couldn't recall ever feeling so completely raw in front of her child. Emily looked down at her hands, fingers twisting nervously in her lap. "I don't know if I can. It's just hard," she finally murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hard is where we begin," Julia replied, offering a small smile that tugged at the corners of her mouth. "How about we figure this out together? Maybe build something new? We both need it. We both need each other." For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Julia saw something shift in Emily's expression. "Okay," she whispered, her voice shaky but determined. "I just want you to care about me." "I do care, sweetheart. I promise," Julia said, emotion swelling in her throat. That moment marked a turning point. It wasn't a solution, but it was a start. They sat together, wrapped in the warmth of tentative hope, feeling lighter than before, like two souls catching a breath of fresh air. But in the back of Julia's mind, the looming threat of the hospital closures remained. Soon, she would have to confront those fears head-on, and she wasn't sure how much strength she had left. As they lingered there, a thought pierced through the haze of emotion. Was her fight for the hospital not just about the community, but for their family as well? Would she risk everything to create a better life for Emily? The answer lay ahead, and Julia felt a rush of determination swell within her. The journey was just beginning, one that would test her strength, challenge her values, and weave their stories closer together. But could they keep the momentum going, even when the stakes were this high? The evening air was crisp, a contrast to the warmth that began blooming in Julia's heart. Emily sat quietly beside her, the tension between them slowly dissipating under the starry sky. Julia stole glances at her daughter, wondering how long it might take to return to the easy banter they once shared. "Want to grab some ice cream?" Julia suggested, trying to lighten the moment. Emily raised an eyebrow and let out a small laugh, something Julia had missed so much. "Are you bribing me?" Emily teased, folding her arms. "Maybe," Julia replied, grinning. "But it's just ice cream, I promise. No strings attached." Emily considered it for a moment, then nodded. "Fine. But you're paying." As they walked to the nearest ice cream shop, Julia couldn't help but feel a flicker of excitement. It wasn't just ice cream they were sharing, it was an unspoken agreement to reconnect, to start anew. Inside the shop, the sweet smell of waffle cones enveloped them. They ordered their favorites, Emily's a decadent chocolate fudge, Julia opting for the classic vanilla. As they sat at a small table, the ice cream melting slightly under the warmth of their hands, Julia felt the moment shift, the tension easing as laughter replaced silence. "So what is going on at school these days?" Julia asked, wiping some ice cream from her chin. Emily's face brightened, and she dove into the details of her classes, her friends, and, surprisingly, the upcoming school play. As she spoke, Julia absorbed the sight of her daughter's animated gestures and shining eyes, the little girl she used to know re-emerging. "Mom, I'm thinking about trying out for the lead role," Emily exclaimed, her enthusiasm contagious. "Lead, huh? I'm impressed." I'd love to see you shine, Julia encouraged, pride swelling inside her. You think I can? Emily looked directly at her, as if sensing the fear of failure hiding behind her mother's cheerful words. Absolutely, Julia said firmly, her heart pounding. You have so much talent, Em. Don't let anything. She paused, realizing how closely this mirrored the battles she was facing for the hospital. Don't let anything hold you back, no matter how hard it seems. Emily studied her for a moment. You really mean that? I do, Julia replied, the sincerity in her voice cutting through. But more importantly, you need to mean it. Have faith in yourself. Emily nodded slightly, a tangled mix of hope and doubt flickering through her eyes. As they finished their ice cream, Julia felt a surge of determination. Maybe they could rebuild more than just their relationship. She considered the fight ahead one that felt daunting, tethered to uncertainty, and fueled by her love for Emily and the community. Hey, how about we collect signatures from the community for the hospital? She suggested impulsively. Show them we are ready to fight back, together. Like a petition? Emily's eyes widened. That could work. Julia felt a rush of warmth. They were not just getting closer, they were becoming partners, allies in each other's struggles. The air buzzed with a familiar sense of purpose, igniting a flame of hope within Julia. But despite the buoyancy of the moment, the enormity of the task hung over her. Would they really make a difference? This plan felt like a critical step, but the stakes loomed larger than life. Julia could almost hear the whispers of doubt or hear the criticism of the naysayers. Yet here, across the table, was Emily ready to fight beside her. As they walked back home, hand in hand, Julia couldn't shake the haunting questions. Were they strong enough to face the coming battles together? Could they keep this newfound momentum alive when the world around them felt relentless and unforgiving? With each step, the answers began to form like clouds in the sky. She could only wonder, when would the storm break, and what would be left in its wake? The next morning, Julia awoke to sunlight streaming through the curtains, warming her face and easing her into the day. Her mind, however, was already racing with thoughts of the petition. As she sat up and stretched, she felt both the weight of uncertainty and the surge of motivation swirling within her. Today, she would lay the groundwork for a movement, one that could not only save the hospital but also heal the rift with Emily. After a quick breakfast, Julia found Emily sprawled on the couch, engrossed in a text conversation. She couldn't help but smile at the sight of her daughter with a grin that reminded her of those carefree childhood days. Hey, Em, she called, excitement lacing her tone. Are you ready to tackle this petition together? Emily looked up, her eyes brightening. Yeah. I've been thinking about ways we can get people involved. Her enthusiasm was contagious, igniting a spark in Julia's heart. Great. Let us make a list of everyone we can ask for support, friends, neighbors, even our family. Julia felt like a cheerleader, pumping up the energy in the room. Together, they scribbled down names, brainstorming ideas for how to make their voices heard. An hour turned into 2, and soon they had a solid plan. They would create flyers, set up a booth at the local farmers market this weekend, and even knock on doors to spread the word. You know, Emily said, a thoughtful look crossing her face, I think it'd be cool to make the flyers bright and colorful. Something that catches attention. Julia chuckled, recalling her daughter's artistic side. That's a fantastic idea. Let us make sure it reflects the community spirit. As they sketched designs together, Julia seized every moment, each shared laugh solidifying the bond that had once felt so fragile. Later in the afternoon, they dressed in comfortable clothes and headed out to gather materials. The streets felt alive, full of laughter and chatter. Julia couldn't help but feel optimistic, each step building on the hope that had blossomed between them. As they reached the local art supply store, a familiar face approached them. Julia. Emily. It was Mrs. Thompson, an elderly neighbor. What's this I hear about a petition? With excitement bubbling in her chest, Julia explained their mission. Mrs. Thompson's eyes sparkled with encouragement. Count me in for a signature. I'll help spread the word too. The hospital is vital for our community. With a warm smile, Emily chimed in, "Thank you. We really appreciate it." Julia watched as her daughter engaged with Mrs. Thompson, and it struck her the way Emily was growing, stepping into her own. As they returned home, their arms laden with supplies, Julia reflected on the day's small victories. Each interaction they had underlined the power of unity. They weren't just seeking signatures, they were mobilizing a community, weaving bonds richer and deeper than before. That night, as they sat at the kitchen table surrounded by colorful art supplies, Julia felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The petition was just the beginning. This journey was about more than just the hospital, it was about reclaiming their family. Just then, Emily paused, her brow furrowed. "Mom, what if not everyone supports us? What if people don't care?" Julia felt her heart drop for a moment, the fear creeping back in, but she met her daughter's gaze with conviction. "That's a risk we have to take. Not everyone will agree, but what matters is that we're trying. We're using our voices." Emily nodded, her expression resolute, but Julia sensed the uncertainty still lingered. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the chaos of their plans, Julia saw a glimmer of fear and strength intertwined on her daughter's face. They were two women, united in a fight that could change everything. As they worked late into the night, drawing colorful sketches and planning their next steps, a question pulsed through Julia's mind: would their efforts be enough to rally the community? Could they truly make a difference together? Little did she know, the challenges ahead would test not just their commitment but their faith in each other. The sun rose again, casting a soft, golden hue across the kitchen table where Julia and Emily had spent countless hours plotting out their movement. Despite the lingering worries from the night before, Julia felt a sense of urgency propelling her forward. Today was key, they needed to hit the ground running. Emily bounded down the stairs, her arms filled with colorful markers and paper. "I've been thinking about the slogans we should use on our flyers," she exclaimed with a burst of energy that put a smile on Julia's face. "Great idea. What do you have in mind?" Julia urged, leaning in closer, eager to hear her daughter's thoughts. "How about save our hospital, save our community?" Emily suggested, her voice rising with enthusiasm. "Or maybe something like Together We Heal." Julia's heart swelled at Emily's creativity. The very ideas reflected the community's spirit, the essence of what they were trying to achieve. "I love those. They're strong and hopeful. Let us include them on our flyers." After breakfast, they set up a makeshift art station in the living room. They spread out glittering papers and colorful markers while smudges of paint painted their fingers. Each detail mattered to Julia. They were co-designing their rallying cry. As they worked, Julia caught a glimpse of Emily's determination. The way her pencil moved swiftly, almost as if she barely paused to think, it's as if she knew what needed to be said. It reminded Julia of how she once stood up in class to share her art project, voice steady, shining with confidence. Julia said softly, taking her daughter's hands into her own, "I'm proud of you. You're really stepping into your own." Emily looked down, her cheeks flushing slightly. "Thanks, Mom. I just want to make a difference, you know? For us, and everyone else." A pang of admiration surged through Julia. This was not just about the hospital, it was about strength, resilience, and reclaiming their lives. But Julia was also aware of the looming doubts that troubled her daughter's heart. "We are making a difference, even if it doesn't feel like it right now." Just then, as they started packing the finished flyers into a box, the doorbell chimed. Startled, they exchanged glances. Julia went to the door and opened it to find Mr. Reynolds, the town mayor, standing on the porch, a skeptical look etched on his face. "Good morning, Julia. Can I have a word?" His tone was neutral but cautious. "Of course, come on in," Julia replied, sensing the weight of his presence. Emily lingered behind her, curiosity alight in her eyes. Once inside, Mr. Reynolds glanced around, his gaze landing on the vibrant flyers piled on the table. "I appreciate your enthusiasm," he began slowly. "But I have concerns about the petition. You might not receive the support you think you will." Julia held her breath, the air thick with uncertainty. We believe that the community deserves to have a voice. The hospital is vital. I get that, he replied, his expression softening slightly. But some will argue we don't need it in our little town. The room fell silent. Julia could feel her heart racing as she looked at Emily, who was silently processing their mayor's words. Determination bubbled within Julia. Then we'll have to show them why it matters. If we don't try, we'll never know what could happen. Mr. Reynolds studied her for a moment, and she held his gaze, unwilling to back down. I hope you're ready for the challenge. It might get messy. Messy is part of change, Julia replied, her voice steady. As he left, Emily turned to her. Mom, what if he's right? What if people don't care? Julia knelt down, meeting Emily's gaze. Then we'll make them care. Together. Just then, Julia felt a surge of hope replace the unease in her heart. They were ready for what was next, ready to fight. But an underlying fear remained: how far would they have to go to rally the support they needed? A determined light shone in Emily's eyes. Let us go to the farmer's market and start talking to people. Let us really do this. Yes. Julia replied, her heart racing in unison with her daughter's eagerness. But remember, it won't be easy. As they prepared to leave, a question lingered in Julia's mind: what awaited them at the market? Would their voices rise above the doubts and fears around them? The journey was just beginning. The moment they arrived at the farmer's market, Julia could feel the electric pulse of the crowd. The sun hung high, casting a warm glow over stalls bursting with fresh produce, handmade crafts, and the spirited chatter of families enjoying their weekend. A mix of excitement and nerves churned in her stomach. Emily took her hand, her grip tight. We can do this, right, Mom? Julia nodded, though her heart raced. Absolutely. We just need to approach people, start conversations. As they wandered through the bustling aisles, they stopped at a flower stall. A woman in a bright sun hat picked out blooming daisies. Julia mustered the courage to speak. Excuse me, ma'am, she began, have you heard about the hospital petition? The woman paused, looking up with curiosity. I've seen some flyers around, but didn't think much of it. Why is it important? Julia sensed an opening. Our hospital is more than just a place for treatment. It's part of our community, our families. If we lose it, we lose our connection to care. The woman furrowed her brow in thought. I hadn't considered that. It would be difficult for many folks. Emily chimed in, her voice steady. Everyone deserves healthcare close to home. It's how we support each other. The woman smiled at Emily, her demeanor softening. You're right, dear. You're both passionate. I'll make sure to spread the word. As they moved to the next stall, Julia felt a small glow of triumph. Maybe they could make a difference after all. But as they continued speaking to different shoppers, Julia could sense the hesitance in some people's responses. A couple exchanged skeptical glances as they debated the need for the hospital. It's an expense we can't afford, one man said sharply. Better to keep taxes low. Julia's heart sank at the dismissal. Emily squeezed her hand tighter, her resolve wavering. Mom, she whispered, what do we say to that? Julia took a deep breath and found her voice. We need to invest in our health. Imagine how many lives can be saved, how many families can stay together. If we don't fight for this now, we risk everything. A young woman nearby nodded slowly. That's true, she said, her voice hesitant but thoughtful. If I had to travel to the city for care, I wouldn't make it in time. That's the point. Julia jumped in, emboldened by the connection. We can't take any chances with our community's health. Suddenly, Emily stepped forward, her small frame exuding fierce determination. We're not just fighting for a building. We're fighting for our friends, our neighbors, our family. Don't you want to help us? Their audience shifted, some nodding in agreement. Julia felt tears pricking her eyes, filled with hope. Something had changed. Emily's brave spirit radiated, touching the hearts of those around them. Julia smiled at her daughter, realizing how far she'd come since the days of self-doubt, now standing strong by her side. As more people began to engage, asking questions and offering support, Julia's heart soared. She couldn't help but think how this was not just a fight for the hospital, but a powerful reminder of their community's strength and unity. With the market winding down, Julia and Emily exchanged glances filled with pride. "Mom, we did it!" Emily exclaimed, her enthusiasm contagious. "We're just getting started, sweetie," Julia replied, hugging her close but lurking deep down, a nagging question started to form. Could they maintain this momentum? Would their newfound supporters stick around when the fight truly intensified? Before they left, a tall man approached, towering over them with an intense gaze. "I heard you talking," he said. "You might need more than just flyers. People like action. Are you ready to fight for this?" Julia's heart raced again, not with fear but with anticipation. "We are," she answered boldly, "and we won't stop until our voices are heard." As they strolled back to the car, a mix of excitement and uncertainty filled the air. What kind of action was he talking about? And were they truly ready for the challenge ahead? The rallying cry was becoming real, and the stakes were just getting higher. The car ride home felt different. The air buzzed with promise and the weight of newfound purpose. Emily chatted enthusiastically about the conversations they'd started, her words tumbling out in bursts. "Did you see how that lady's face lit up when we talked about the hospital? I think she'll tell everyone she knows. We're actually making a difference." Julia smiled at her daughter. Emily's excitement was infectious. But between the joy was a sliver of trepidation. "You're absolutely right, Em. But we have to be prepared for any pushback. Not everyone will see it our way." Emily's face fell slightly, but she quickly rallied. "But we're making them think. Isn't that what matters?" "Sometimes it takes more than thought," Julia replied, her mind racing through the possibilities. "We might need to organize a rally, or even meet with local leaders. We can't just talk, we need to show our commitment." As they pulled into their driveway, a sense of gravity enveloped them. Julia noticed the neighbor's yard, unkempt and brown, a stark contrast to the vibrancy of the market. Just as they stepped out of the car, Emily skipped ahead, eager to burst through the door. But Julia lingered, looking back at the empty street, her heart heavy with uncertainties. It was time for action, yes, but was she really ready to leave her comfort zone behind? Inside their home, Emily jumped onto the couch, flipping through her sketchbook. "We should make a banner, Mom. Something eye-catching. And we can map out where we can distribute the flyers." "Those are great ideas," Julia said, nodding. She walked to the kitchen, filling a kettle with water. She needed something to ground herself. But her mind wandered back to the tall man at the market. His words echoed in her mind, "People like action." She knew they had to rally support, but what if they faced resistance? There were risks involved, and she felt the weight of those choices sitting on her chest. "Mom? Are you okay?" Emily's voice interrupted her thoughts. Julia turned, forcing a smile. "Yes, sweetie. I'm just thinking." Emily looked concerned. "About the hospital? We can do this. Think about all the people who need it. We won't let them down." Her daughter's passion washed over Julia like a warm wave, momentarily washing away her fears. "You're right, Em. We can't let our community down." But doubt still loomed. What if they were met with anger? What if they pushed too hard and lost their supporters just as quickly? As the kettle whistled, Julia tried to shake off the anxiety. She poured the tea and joined Emily on the couch. Together, they sprawled papers and colorful markers on the coffee table, trying to capture the essence of their message. "How about healthcare, a right, not a privilege?" Julia suggested. Emily brightened. "And we can outline all the services our hospital provides. People need to know what they lose." Working side by side sparked an electric feeling in the air. It felt hopeful, empowering. But as Emily scribbled away, Julia couldn't shake the notion that their friendly community might turn hostile. Later that night, after Emily went to bed, Julia sat alone with her thoughts deep into the darkness. Her hands trembled as she glanced at the flyers on the table. They were more than just paper, they were symbols of a fight, a promise that they would not remain silent. Just then, her phone buzzed, pulling her back into reality. It was a message from the tall man. "Let us meet. I have an idea. And it's big." Julia's heart skipped a beat as she stared at the words flashing on her screen. What kind of big did he mean? Was this the moment that could change everything? With a deep breath, she typed back, "I'm in." The fight for their community was ramping up, and now the question loomed larger than ever: was she truly ready for this challenge when everything was at stake? The next morning felt heavy with expectation. Julia woke early, the sunlight streaming through the kitchen window felt too bright, almost blinding. She poured a cup of coffee, the aroma wrapping around her like an embrace as she sat at the table, staring at the flyers they had crafted the night before. Healthcare, a right, not a privilege. She could almost hear the words echo in her mind, the promise they held invigorating yet terrifying. Emily bounded into the room, her energy undeniable. "Mom, can we practice our speech together? I want to be ready." Julia looked up, the determination on her daughter's face washing over her like a wave. It was contagious. "Of course, Em. Let us go over it." The two gathered around the table with the flyers and markers. Emily's fingers danced as she demonstrated the enthusiasm she hoped to radiate. "We want to show them how much this matters. It's not just about us, it's about everyone." Julia pointed to a flyer. "Okay, what if we start by telling them about our story? About how vulnerable people really are without healthcare? That everyone deserves access to help." The early morning light reflected off Emily's eager eyes. "Yes. And we can share some of the stories we heard at the market." As they practiced, Julia felt her heart race. Emily's confidence fueled her own. Each word they rehearsed sent sparks of hope through the air. But deep down, Julia's fears returned like a heavy cloak. Would their stories move people, or would they just be met with indifference? Just as doubts began to creep in again, her phone vibrated. It was a call from the tall man. "Julia? Meet me at the park in an hour. I have connections who can help." The urgency in his voice sent a thrill through her veins. She nodded instinctively as if he could see her, even through the phone. "I'll be there." After hanging up, she glanced at Emily, who was in mid-sentence, oblivious to her mother's distraction. "How about a big sign that says, 'Stand with us for healthcare'?" "We can use bright colors, sweetie. I have to go meet someone," Julia interrupted, her heart racing. "But I need you to keep working on the banners. You're doing amazing." Emily's face fell slightly. "What if you don't come back in time?" Julia knelt down to meet her eye level, realizing this was more than just a casual meeting for her. "Remember, sometimes we have to take risks for what we believe in. This fight is for us all." Emily nodded, her eyes brightening again. "Okay. I'll keep going, Mom. Just come back with good news." Heart swelling with pride, Julia rushed out of the house. As she drove to the park, determination surged inside her. She would fight for this, for Emily, for their community. Each turn and bump in the road added to her resolve. Upon reaching the park, the tall man was waiting at a picnic table, his expression serious yet inviting. "I've talked to some local leaders. They're interested," he said, lowering his voice. "But they want to see that you two can rally real support." "Real support?" Julia felt the weight of expectation. "You mean a larger event?" He nodded. "A rally. It's the perfect way to show you mean business. Bring the community together." A tremor of fear gripped Julia. What if it backfires? What if the people don't come? He raised a hand. "That's the risk. But I believe you and your daughter can inspire them. It's time to turn this hope into action." Julia swallowed hard. Could she really help mobilize the community? The stakes were higher than she'd imagined. As anxiety and excitement collided, her resolve hardened. "Okay," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "We'll do it. But we need to plan it right." As they started exchanging ideas for the rally, Julia felt the surge of community spirit rising within her. Each possibility lit a fire inside. She could almost hear Emily's voice cheering her on. But behind her excitement loomed one undeniable question: would everyone stand with them? Would they rally together or let fear drive them apart? As she drove back home, Julia's heart raced. It was time for action, but could she really unite her community? The ideas echoed in her mind, but in the back of her thoughts, a chilling uncertainty whispered, what if the very voices they were trying to reach turned against them? With the organization of the rally looming ahead, she felt the weight of her choices. But Emily was depending on her. And so, the battle for their community had only just begun. Julia sat at the kitchen table, the remnants of her coffee cooling beside her. She should have been focused on planning the rally, but her mind was in a whirlwind. Emily's excitement contrasted sharply with the doubt that bubbled inside her. The flyers lay spread out like a vibrant tapestry of hopes and dreams, yet every colorful word shimmered with a palpable fear of disappointment. "Mom, what colors should we use for the protest signs?" Emily bounced on her heels, a sketchbook cradled in her arms. Maybe orange and blue?" Julia suggested, trying to shake off the hesitation that clung to her like a winter coat. "That'll look awesome. It'll be so bright." Emily's enthusiasm was infectious like sunlight breaking through a cloudy sky, and for a moment, Julia felt her heart lighten. "Yeah, bright sounds great." Julia sighed, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Let us focus on making signs that tell our story." They spent the afternoon crafting colorful messages filled with hope and urgency. Healthcare for all. No one left behind. Each phrase soared with possibilities. But as the words came to life, so did the weight of their significance. "Mom, what if not everyone believes in what we're doing?" Emily's question cut through the air, and for a second, Julia was at a loss. "Some people might not understand, sweetheart. But we have to try," Julia replied, gripping her daughter's shoulder with reassurance. "Change often starts small." Emily nodded but glanced down at the paper, her face a mixture of hope and worry. "But what if people come and they don't care? What if they yell at us?" Julia felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "Then we explain, and we stand together. No matter what." That evening, Julia lay in bed, the glow of a streetlight filtering through the curtains. She turned the tall man's voice over in her mind, his confidence wrapping around her like a warm blanket. It was easy to get caught in fear. She realized she had been scared for years, holding her breath each time the topic of healthcare surfaced at family gatherings or community meetings. Would raising her voice finally break the silence they all huddled in? The next morning arrived with a crispness that brought clarity. Julia could hear Emily humming as she prepared breakfast. The sight of her daughter, so full of life and energy, stirred something within her. This was bigger than just healthcare. This was about giving Emily and every other child a future filled with hope. After breakfast, Julia turned to Emily. "Let us visualize the rally. Imagine how it will feel, people standing together, caring about each other." Emily's eyes sparkled at the thought. "Can we invite friends? Maybe Sarah and Liam would want to come." Julia thought about the possibilities. "Absolutely. The more people, the better. Together, we can make a difference." As they planned, Julia's heart began to beat with a purpose she hadn't felt before. The self-doubt started to melt away, replaced by a sense of shared responsibility. The day of the rally arrived. Julia dressed in comfortable jeans and a bright red shirt that matched the bold urgency of their cause. The park was alive with chatter, and Emily stood beside her, holding a sign that read, "We deserve healthcare." Her energy was infectious, and as people began to gather, Julia felt the weight of their collective voices. Yet, as Julia scanned the crowd and recognized familiar faces and noticed some wary expressions, an unsettling whisper echoed in her mind: what if they didn't stand united? What if the noise of discord drowned them out? Then, she remembered Emily. She thought of her daughter's bright eyes, the way she had believed in the possibility of change, and suddenly Julia was flooded with resolve. Raising her voice above the chatter, she called out, "Thank you for being here. Today isn't just about us, it's about everyone who needs help." The crowd turned toward her, expressions shifting from uncertainty to curiosity. Julia took a deep breath. Here it was the moment of truth. Would they respond? Just then, she spotted a figure in the back, someone she had never expected to see. Her stomach dropped. What would this mean for all they were fighting for? As she stood there, every heartbeat echoed the weight of what was to come. The challenge wasn't just about rallying support, it was about learning how to stand firm in the face of adversity. Could she do that, and could Emily withstand whatever might come next? The crowd buzzed with murmurs, a tide of emotion swirling around Julia. She saw familiar faces, neighbors, friends, even people from her nursing community who had rallied to support her. Her heart swelled with pride and fear. Standing at that podium felt like standing on the edge of a diving board, staring down into the unknown. Just as she opened her mouth to speak again, a shadow fell through the crowd. Julia's heart sank. It was Maggie, the town's staunchest opponent of the hospital, the woman who had criticized the budget and questioned the community's need for such services. Julia's resolve threatened to waver. What if she derailed everything? But then, she looked at Emily, standing tall with her sign, eyes bright and fierce. That girl had internalized the message of hope and determination. Julia took a deep breath, steadying herself against the podium. "This isn't just a rally to save our hospital," she declared, voice steady. "This is a rally to save our community." A wave of nods and murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. She focused on Emily, her beacon in the storm. Every one of us has felt the impact of losing someone we love. We can't afford to be continually pushed aside. We need the care that the hospital provides, a safety net for families, a lifeline for our mothers, fathers, and children. Julia felt the atmosphere shift. People were leaning in, hanging on her words. Hope turned the tide, washing over doubts like a gentle rain. She spoke of her late husband, of the times they had spent relying on that tiny hospital when things grew too scary. Emily's expression mirrored her mother's passion. The tangled emotions within Julia cleared as she continued. "And we can't do this alone," she rallied. "We need the voices of everyone here today. If you believe that healthcare is a right and not a privilege, then we must stand together for it." With every word, she connected more deeply with the crowd. People responded, voices rising in agreement, and whispers of encouragement flew through the air like confetti. Even Maggie shifted uncomfortably, her skepticism wavering under the weight of their collective hope. Then Emily stepped forward with her own sign. "Together we heal. Let's keep our families safe." She raised it high above her head, her eyes shining bright. The crowd erupted, a chorus of cheers and claps resonating through the park. In that moment, a sudden rush of realization flooded Julia. It wasn't just the hospital they were fighting for, it was their future. Their struggle was a tapestry woven from every face in the crowd, all standing for collective hope. Tears filled her eyes, and she quickly brushed them away, focusing on the signs, the shouts, the unity. As the rally continued, people stepped forward to speak, neighbors sharing personal stories, a local doctor discussing the necessity of access to care. Each voice added fuel to the fire, each story deepening the roots of their cause. Maggie stepped forward, timidly at first, and the crowd hushed. "I had my doubts," she began slowly, voice shaky. "But seeing everyone come together like this, it's powerful. I may not agree with everything, but I see that this matters. We need to do something." If Julia hadn't known any better, she could have sworn the crowd held its breath, hopeful for acceptance. In a surprising twist, Maggie's words united them further. They rallied around her, and Julia knew they had broken down the walls that had separated voices in the community. They were together, unified not just by their struggles, but also by a newfound understanding. As the sun began to set, drenching everything in a golden hue, the feeling of empowerment throbbed through Julia's veins. She smiled at Emily, who was giddy with exhilaration, her heart singing. Today was just the beginning. Their efforts had stirred something marvelous in their community, something vital and enduring. With the rally subsiding, Julia stood with her daughter and the community she had fought so hard to reconnect with. Every face told a story, every yearn for care resonated deeply, reaffirming that together, they could indeed heal. "Let us commit to this journey," she cried out, voice rising above the fading cheers. "Let us take the energy here today and turn it into action. We will set meetings. We will gather more signatures. We will make phone calls." The crowd erupted with applause, their voices combining into one. Emily squeezed her hand, the warmth between them igniting a flame of trust and hope. This was a moment of transformation, a patching up of wounds long festering. Julia felt a rush of love for not just her daughter but for everyone standing beside them. They would fight together because that was what family and community were meant to do. As night descended upon them, a flicker of dreams began to take flight, illuminating the future. Julia looked up at the rising stars. She had conquered fears, built bridges, and together with Emily, they would take on whatever came next. And it was in that moment of triumph, when everything felt impossible, that she understood they had already won. This was just the beginning, and tomorrow would bring more battles. But for now, they had each other. And that was everything. Now, it's time for you to join this journey. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss out on our next exclusive stories that inspire transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and spread the hope. Comment your reactions and feelings about this ending. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Let's make a difference together. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Show your support for our community.